Okay. Keep going.
When you have old friends, it doesn't matter how long it's been.
Yes.
It's like you just kind of fall right back into the same like routines and stuff. It's like,
Are you calling me old?
yes, something like that.
Yes.
All right, here we go. Speaking of bonkers, I went in and remember I was telling you about the crazy woman.
Yep.
Yeah, I went and she's still there. She's definitely on the thing. I was totally wrong. Those people were not crazy enough to take out the absolute craziness.
Okay. Did she have her own like subsection?
She should. She should have her own ward, as it were. Her name is Christiane Northrup.
Okay.
Of the East Brunswick Northrups. I'm going to share this, even though. Can you hear it? Can you hear her?
Yeah.
Okay.
You are the medicine. You are the miracle.
You are the miracle.
Mm-hmm.
She's talking about the people are helping us from the other side.
How to become fearless. Faith is a verb.
It's all the UN agenda.
Yes.
Oh, God. With frequencies. They're doing a parasite summit in January.
Oh, good.
Anyway, it just keeps going on and on and on. How great is that?
I just found your Christmas gift.
How great is that? Oh, my gosh.
She's a writer. Do you think we can get her on here?
I bet we could. Man, that would be
Talk
something
about
else.
dodging energy vampires.
Yes.
Are these like astral energy vampires?
They're everything. They're parasites. They're all
Is it
parasites.
how to physically dodge them?
I really
Like
feel
they're-
like probably there's some Scientology like as a source in there where she's coming from. You know what I mean? Which is like, do you think these evolved beings flying through space would want to come here and whatever?
I think Scientology is probably the most reputable source she has in there.
That's true. That's true. This is, by the way, it's called, the subtitle on that is, it's an empath's guide to evading relationships that drain you and restoring your health and power. You need to punctuate that, I think, because it's relationships that drain you and restoring your health and power.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We don't need to punctuate that at all. That's what she meant to say. Yeah.
That was so much craziness stacked on top of each other that you can't even have time to break down.
That's what I'm saying. And like I said, and that's, I mean, I'm 15 minutes into it. It's been craziness for 15 minutes. That's why the crowd was cheering for her, because they're like, I don't even know what I'm cheering for anymore. Yes. And she is I'm not sure what her credentials are. She's a doctor. She's an OBGYN.
Mm-hmm.
That's who you want delivering your baby, right?
And that, dear listeners, is the world we are living in today. Welcome back to Native Tongues, your favorite podcast that's hosted by Aaron Palmer and Ken Hall. If you're enjoying what you listen to, please do us a favor and hit the follow button at the top of the page. It would also be greatly helpful if you'd leave us a review or 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. You can also follow us on Instagram at Native Tongues Pod. So on to the guest this week. We've got a gentleman that took a very non-traditional path into writing. He discovered filmmaking at a young age, but didn't know where to start with it professionally. He ended up joining the Army, and afterwards attended film school where he learned the trade. He has now written over 50 scripts, optioned a number of them. He's had a few of the scripts produced, has now published 6 novels, and taken on lots of gig work, including writing some narrative podcasts and even working with R.L. Stine. And he's even written beat sheets for the Save the Cat website. So get ready to learn a lot about the business of filmmaking and the publishing industry. Let's welcome screenwriter and author Don Roff.
We tell time by the sun out here, and it's hard for us to keep everything straight.
2 fists above, you know.
Right? When the sun goes down, all bets are off. Who knows?
Yeah.
So where are you right now? You're in.
I'm in Walla Walla, Washington, actually.
Okay.
Yes, I was going to say that, but I felt like I would get tripped
Say
up.
that 3 times fast, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Right. Are you from there?
Yeah, I am actually. I grew up. There's actually a little town about 10 miles from here called Milton Freewater, Oregon, and I actually grew up there for the first 16 years of my life, and that's kind of when I started like making little movies and stuff. And then I moved to Walla Walla and lived here for a while, and then moved all over, lived in New York City, went in the military, stuff like that. And then I moved back here. I guess it was 2011, and I love it here. So it's
You're right, like on the border. Is that like right on the border of Like Oregon and Washington?
Yeah, very close. Yeah, very
Okay.
close. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yep,
Are you close
yep.
to Canada? I'm sorry, I don't know my geography.
Oh, no.
I probably
This
could have
is,
looked that up.
Yeah. This is southeastern Washington, so it's really close to Oregon.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd have to live in like Okanagan County, which is way north to be close to Canada.
Okay.
Yeah, Canada's I think about a 6-hour drive.
Okay. That's kind of like where we are. Yeah. Like
Oh, okay.
I drove, so we're in Baltimore, or just north of.
Oh,
But
yeah.
I drove to Montreal for a bachelor party, and I was like, oh my God, I'm going to drive to Canada. And then it turns out it's like a 7-hour drive, 6-hour drive, something like that.
Oh wow, you live in the land of John Waters, so
Oh,
Yes,
yeah.
indeed. He's around. If you keep your eyes open, you'll see him around town.
is that right? Oh, that's
Yeah,
great. I love his
absolutely.
movies.
Mhm.
I love his book Crackpot. Yeah, he's
Oh,
a
yeah.
lot of fun.
Yeah, he's a real gem here.
Yeah, that's great. He's so funny. I mean, I love whenever he's on. He needs to be out in the world more, I think. I heard a rumor
I
that he
agree.
might be making another movie, but I don't know if that's true or not.
Possibly. He just had an exhibit at the BMA here, the
Okay.
museum,
Okay.
and they were gonna put up a plaque and like name something after him, and he asked not to do a wing. He asked them to name a bathroom after him.
That's classic John Waters right there.
Right? He's
I
like,
love
everyone's
that.
gonna see this, you know?
I love that. Yeah. Like he's like not pretentious at all. That's great.
Yeah, right.
It
Yeah.
does actually sort of, as the soul, like embodies a lot of really what a lot of Baltimore is.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
In a real way,
I've never been to
for sure.
Baltimore, but I definitely will have to change that sometime. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
two of my
it's got
favorite
some
movies are
little
set.
grime.
A few of my favorite movies are set in Baltimore. Diner.
Mhm.
I actually love all the Barry Levinson his
Yeah,
trilogy.
Tin Men.
Yeah, Tin Men and Avalon, and then
Mm.
Home for the Holidays, which I watch every year, is a Baltimore movie. So,
I don't know that
yeah.
I've ever seen that.
Okay, what is Home for
Oh.
the Holidays? How do I not know that?
Oh wow, it's got Holly Hunter. It's directed by Jodie Foster. It's got Robert Downey Jr. It's
Oh
one
my
of
God.
those. To me, it's the holy trilogy of Charlie Brown Thanksgiving, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, and Home for the Holidays. Like Thanksgiving is nothing without those movies.
Well, I gotta put this on the
We
list.
watch them in that order for like joy level.
I just randomly whenever I can, So,
Yeah. The Charlie Brown Thanksgiving is a special place, especially to show it to kids now where they're
Oh,
like,
absolutely,
oh my God,
absolutely.
what is happening? What is wrong with this?
Yeah,
Why are they so
absolutely,
sad?
absolutely. I know we even
Yeah.
coordinated. So like when Snoopy and Woodstock are having their pumpkin pie at the end, we like have our pumpkin pie so we can have it at the same
Oh,
time.
alright.
So
Nice.
It's like an
Yeah,
event.
yeah.
I love that.
yeah, it's something my girlfriend Molly came up with, and I was like, so we do it every year. It's kind of fun. So
Funny.
Awesome. So you breezed over your life very quickly.
yeah,
There was a couple of little nuggets in there.
Yeah.
You were in the military?
I was. Yeah, I was Army Ranger, 3rd Ranger Battalion, Fort Benning, Georgia, from '89 to '93. So
Okay.
yep, tried that out.
What took you into there?
I was always curious about the military. I grew up like, of course, probably not the best thing, but watching a lot of war movies. And so I was always curious about the military. And I used to when I was a kid, I'd run down, to the National Guard and get all the little stuff. And they would even let me wear shirts and stuff like that. I think my big thing was I was really a big World War II, aficionado. Like I grew up like reading everything about it. There was a TV show on called, How About Black Sheep? I think it was later called Black Sheep Squadron. So it was like, the 70s, I feel like the 70s, there was kind of a World War II kind of resurgence. It was kind of becoming, really popular. I mean, you even had shows like Wonder Woman that took place during World War II. It just, that whole, conflict and I had relatives, and at that time there was a lot of people in my hometown of 5,000 who, some had flown like P-38s, and they had just
wow.
kind of an
Oh, wow.
amazing. And I even had an uncle who was, he was in the Pacific Theater, and he was actually even captured and escaped. He even had a story. He wouldn't talk. He didn't like to talk about it for obvious reasons. But
I was about to say, I'm like, and you were like, yeah, that sounds like that's for me. Sign me up.
exactly. Yeah, I was like, and so yeah, when I was 21, I was just like, I was really into physical fitness, and I was just like, this is probably the last time I'm really going to be able to try something like this. And I actually went to the Navy recruiter, and I was like, hey, I want to be a SEAL. And he was like, oh, do you like submarines? And I'm like, hell no, I'm very claustrophobic. And the idea of just being in this close little tube with thousands of gallons of water,
Yes.
That just like sent a chill down my spine. So then I went to the Army recruiter. I was like, I want to be Special Forces because there's a movie called First Blood who I thought like, oh, wow, Green Beret. That's so cool. He's like,
so you saw First Blood and you're like, yeah, that's for me too. I want to
do that too. Yeah. And I probably read the novel like 3 times too, which even has more about the Special Forces in that.
Okay.
And he's like, no, you can't just join Special Forces. You have to be an E5. But what you can do is join.
Came in with a lot of ambition.
He's like, you can join the Rangers. I was like, oh, what's that? And they were like, well, they kind of go in and kick ass and they take down airfields. So I was like, okay, cool. Sign me up for that.
Nice.
So what you get is you get unassigned Ranger. You're not guaranteed a slot. You have to get the MOS, which is the military occupational specialty. So originally I wanted to be medic, but thank God I didn't go medic because I knew some medics and they saw some shit. And I saw some shit and I'm horrified by it, but they actually had to get in and do shit.
Right, you have to run in and get your hands in there.
So I became an RTO, radio transmitter operator. So did that, went through basic AIT, which is advanced individual training, went to airborne school. And if you pass airborne school, then you're guaranteed, at the time it was called RIP, Ranger Indoctrination Program. So right after airborne school, I mean, you feel really tall. You got your 5 jumps. You got your wings. You're like, wow, I could take on the world. Right. And the minute, they get you on the bus to RIP and they're just like screaming at you and everything else. It's like, you're nothing, you're this and that. So that was kind of 3 weeks of like hell week.
Wow.
We started out with 119 volunteers and we graduated 19. So,
oh my God, wow.
The attrition rate was kind of high.
You would think with indoctrination right in the name that you'd be really like attracting people,
Exactly.
Yeah, I was wondering that.
I think it's called RASP now. I think it's like Ranger Assessment something program or something. But RIP at the time was Ranger Indoctrination Program. And some people, they just couldn't pass the pull-ups. You had to do 6 pull-ups. And to me, like, if you didn't pass even the PT stuff, like they would just send you wherever the hell they wanted to. Like to me, like I heard it was actually an awesome deployment, like going to Korea. But to me, I was like, fuck that. I want to be an Army Ranger in the United States. I don't want to serve overseas.
Right. And
then I did a lot of extra PT and runs with friends just in case. Because if you got a real, RI, Ranger instructor dick who wouldn't count your pull-ups and stuff, they could make your life a living hell. So be able to do, the minimum is 6 pull-ups, but you want to be able to do 10 good ones just in case they only count 6. So.
Yeah. I feel like it's a good life lesson too about just like over-index, dude. Go whatever they say, do 2 more just in case.
Yeah. So there's 3 Ranger battalions. There's 1st Ranger Battalion, which is in Savannah, which I heard is like the nicest one because it's on the beach.
Beautiful place.
2nd Ranger Battalion, it's in Georgia. And then 2nd Ranger Battalion's in Fort Lewis, Washington, which is where I wanted to go to because it was close to home. And then 3rd Ranger Battalion, which is in Fort Benning, which I thought was the armpit of the world because I went there for jump school and then RIP. And I was like, I do not want to be in fucking Fort Benning. Of course, I get Fort Benning. So I'm like, fucking the armpit of the world. But I'm glad because I met, I did my 4 years. We did some combat at Operation Just Cause in 1989.
I think I saw you went to Panama, right?
Yeah. And we were supposed to go to it was first Desert Shield, then it became Desert Storm. And we were training for that. And then I think General Schwarzkopf had an idea of how he wanted to use the Rangers. And then our commander was like, no, you're not going to use the Rangers in that way. So I think only just a detachment of like 1st Battalion went there. So we didn't end up going to that, which I'm actually glad because a lot of people came back with a lot of health problems and stuff like that. So, a month in Panama was plenty. I saw, all I needed to really see. So things I'll never get out of my mind. So that was enough. And then after 4 years of that, I was like, I'm not as badass as I thought I was. And I was like, I'd rather maybe write about this than actually live it. So, and I kind of felt like an imposter. Like I didn't feel like there was guys who were just career guys and they were just, hard charging and stuff. And I'm definitely more of a right brain kind of abstract artist, writer, thinker type.
Probably not what the military's looking for.
It's really
at
not
that level.
Yeah,
they're not looking for the guy that's going to be like, but what if?
It's not conducive for that. It's not conducive for that. You got to be somebody who's going to think on their feet, just boom, boom, boom. And that's not me. And by the end, I was even kind of rebellious. I was just like listening to punk rock music all the time and just like watching movies like Sid and Nancy and Repo Man. I was trying to deprogram myself to just kind of get out, and so then I got out and I was like, I always wanted to go to film school and I wanted to, write. That was always kind of my dream because I started making movies in 1981 with my friends. And I was like, man, now's the one chance I could actually go back. I went in at 21 and I came out at 26, or I went in at 22 and came out 26. And then I was like, I can still do that. I'm still young, so.
GI Bill for that to get?
Yeah, GI Bill. Yep. Unfortunately, I did not get the college fund, which is one reason I signed up for it. I don't know, but recruiters have a way of, getting you in and throwing out paperwork and stuff like that. They're kind of like used car salesmen.
Right.
So they're not known for being exactly, the most upstanding people. But
you were getting recruited as a very young kid coming down. They're like, here, take a button, have a T-shirt. Mm-hmm. You're going to be great.
So my idea was, go to Los Angeles and go to like USC or UCLA. But my grades were not good because as a kid, I'd be in high school and we'd be in typing class and we were supposed to type an assignment and I'd write screenplays. I'd type little short stories and screenplays. So my grades were not great because school bored the shit out of me because I'd rather be making up stuff or thinking about whatever character stuff I would try to do. I was reading a lot of Ray Bradbury and Stephen King at the time. And I try to write scripts based on Ray Bradbury's Martian Chronicles and stuff like that, which was a fun exercise on those nice IMDb, typewriters and stuff. But the teachers didn't exactly like that very much. So I didn't get great grades.
Well, do you remember your first movie? Do you remember the first movie you made with your friends? Like when you were like, all right, here's the epic.
Yeah, I remember it all. Yeah, it was, so my parents, and I still have the camera. It was a little Browning regular 8 camera. And it's one of the kind where the reel is only about a minute and a half long. You have to flip the reel. It's almost like 16 millimeter film and you have to flip it halfway through, which is really terrible because you could fog the film and everything. Right. And I made this movie called Psycho 81. I had never seen Hitchcock's Psycho. And I thought it was just like this bloody slasher movie. So I kind of wanted to do an updated version, which based on just clips that I've seen. So I kind of put this movie together and we had no idea what we were doing.
Get the gist of it.
All the outdoor stuff was way overexposed because we didn't know how to use the shutter speed. All the indoor stuff was way underexposed. You could barely see what the hell's going on, but it was fun. Our neighbors had this big house across the street and they let us use it for an afternoon. And, I was making caro syrup with food coloring and we're using Gaines burgers for brains. Somebody gets hit in the head with an axe. Of course, you can't see any of this because it's all. Right. I had a broken knife, and we did the old trick where somebody throws a knife, and then we do the whip pan, and then that actually looked pretty good. But all the little tricks because I used to have these little books how to make movies and stuff like that. And there's this great book called The Book of Movie Photography, and that was my Bible. I used to study that book. So then I started doing little stop motion and stuff like that. I'd take models and add G.I. Joes and action figures. And, I'd see movies like The Road Warrior, or I love the Desert Chase and Raiders of the Lost Ark. And I'd try to recreate those using stop motion. So that was a lot of fun.
In the backyard in the woods.
Exactly. Yeah. I'd make a little diorama and then I have little models. And then I had Star Wars characters and Micronauts and Micronauts were great because they were more articulate. And the old G.I. Joes, the 12-inch ones, those were great because they're very articulate. You could do, individual frames. So stop motion was fun. It takes a lot of patience because it takes you. I made one stop motion movie. It was about 2 minutes. It took me 8 hours. And that's actually kind of fast because I think in professional stop motion, it takes about 8 hours to do about 45 seconds. So it's even more.
Right. The difference, I remember as a kid, I had one of those shoulder VHS cameras, Then I remember trying to do stop motion with some Lego sets
on a VHS.
And on a VHS, it was very efficient.
You can do it. That was kind of the fun stuff.
How old were you when you were doing that stuff?
I was 14.
14?
I was 14 at the time, yeah. I saw the movie Jaws when I was 8 years old. I begged my mom to go see that movie. I had to see that movie. And my grandmother and everybody had read the book. And of course, if you read the book, it's a lot different than the movie. There's a lot of sex in it, stuff like that. And they were like, you can't take them to see that because they thought it was all going to be in there. And thankfully, my mom relented, took me to the movie. I was traumatized, completely had nightmares. And I really kind of trauma bonded with that movie, but I had never seen anything like that. I'd been to the movies before, been to the drive-in. but people were running up the aisles screaming. People were throwing up in the front aisles. There was lines around the block. I mean,
oh my God.
I'd never seen anything like that. It was crazy. Just the fervor of it and the intensity. It ruined swimming for me till I was about 22 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't even go to the deep end of the pool because I know, with somebody with an overactive mind, I mean, I saw Jaws everywhere. My mom would wash my hair and I'd see Jaws, in the soap, like, yeah, I see this mouth kind of coming right at me, So, overactive imagination. But after that, I wanted to remake Jaws. Like, I wanted to, get my friends together. And I never even thought about making movies. And I didn't pick up a camera until I saw Raiders of the Lost Ark, in 1981. And then that was the time I was like, okay, I'm making movies. I'm doing this. So
this is where it's at.
That's where it kind of started. So I started writing little scripts and stuff. I ended up not filming the scripts because they were way too detailed and too much going on. So we would just kind of wing it. We'd just kind of shoot off the cuff. We'd kind of make it up as we were going along when we'd shooting. Like, okay, how about this happens next? So we'd have a little story conference. Oh yeah, that's good. Okay. And then we'd shoot a little bit more and then, oh, what happens next? So that's how we kind of did it.
It's like story plotting by resources. You're like, well, we have this and we could go there. So why don't we have it too? And that still 100% happens today.
Yeah. So we do them off the cuff and it was fun. It was still the funnest part of it. I mean, I write movies, I've had movies made and stuff like that, but it was never as fun as that. Those were great times. So
yeah, no borders, no guidelines.
No,
where you
don't get notes. I mean, you do get notes from your friends, but they're loose. You can work with those notes. Yeah, they're
or you just look at them and you don't know what the hell you're talking about. Shut up.
Exactly. Yeah, we've had those conversations definitely.
So wait, did you make it into film school?
I went to Walla Walla Community College because I'd gone there once before because I didn't really know what to do, and I'd done so poorly because I wouldn't even show up to classes. I heard they had a forgiveness program, so for me to go to any other school, I was going to have to fix my GPA. So I went to 2 more years of community college, and it was a great refresher because I'd been out of school for so long. And I basically so motivated by, not wanting to have to go to the military again. Like I went from a C student to like an A+ student. Like I aced every class. I redid. They had a forgiveness policy. Like if you got a C in a class, if you retook it, you could, get a better grade. So yeah, I aced it. And then
it's kind of like a scared straight program.
Exactly. And then a girl at the time I was dating, she was like, hey, you should go to Evergreen. And I was like, how? No. I want to go to USC or UCLA. She's like, they have a film program. And I kind of looked it up and I was like, well, I guess it is the only, film school in Washington State. So we ended up going there. It's up in Olympia and, in the rainforests of Washington. So for like about 9 months of the year, it's like you're living in Blade Runner. It's just rain and dark and depressing as hell.
Less neon lights.
Yeah. Summers are nice. So I went 2 years there, but most of the filmmaking there was more about like making ethnographies and stuff. They didn't really like narrative film very much. It was more about doing documentaries and things like that. And that's not what I was interested in doing. So
why do you think that was?
It was just the culture of Evergreen. It's more about, discovery and, I think my instructors kind of made me want to do an ethnography on like indigenous peoples and stuff like that. I'm like, hell with that. I want to do a mockumentary about drug scare films like, Reaper Madness, which is what I did, which is funny because our final projects were showed on the big screen. And after so many of those, and there's nothing wrong with that kind of style of filmmaking. It's just not for me. The audience had seen so many of those and mine was one of the last ones and people were just laughing and cheering and I would say it probably won the audience award. And to me, that validated everything because to me, I want to entertain people, So if you can inspire people, enlighten them, cool. But entertain people, that is to me the best thing ever. So that's all I've ever wanted to do is just entertain people.
I got to imagine the film school is pretty split. So, I mean, traditionally, you'd think a lot of the people are real heady.
Oh, yeah.
And looking to make a difference. And
I used to get a lot of shit, too. Like, oh, you just want to be a Hollywood guy. And you didn't. Like, yeah.
I would like
What's
that.
wrong
If
with
that's
that?
not your aspiration, we're not in the same place.
I know. I was like the one person in my class who was like defending Home Alone. It's like, no, that's a mythic journey. They're like, oh, you're sold out. You're this or that. And it's just like, whatever. So I like what I like. So
yeah, I think commercials great.
Absolutely.
You can make something that entertains people for decades.
You can. And hey, if you could put a little, human metaphor in there too, all the better. So you can do both. So you might have a film that actually, spans time. If you can do that, great.
Yeah. So you left there and did you go to LA?
No, I didn't. I went to Seattle, and I worked in the movie industry by working at a lot of movie theaters, and
sold a lot of popcorn.
Exactly, sold a lot of popcorn. But over the summer after I graduated, I took a screenwriting course at Evergreen, and I'd written short scripts and filmed them, but I'd never written a feature script. So I wrote, I was like, well, if I take a class, it will actually keep me, because it's hard to just sit down and try to write something like that. And I was like, this way it will keep me, it will keep me accountable. And I was the only person who actually wrote a script and got 1/3 of my rewrite done. I took the class very seriously, and then that put the bug in me. So while I was working, I was temping, doing odd jobs in Seattle. I was writing scripts. That's all I was doing, is just writing scripts. And then they started getting noticed. I think my 4th script started getting some notice. I was just read as many scripts as I could, just wrote as much as I could, rewrote as much as I could. And, one script actually, got some notice. And that was kind of all I really needed to okay, I'm doing something if people are paying attention to it,
What were you doing with your script? So you're writing it and then what?
Back in those days, they had an organization called Cinema Seattle, and they were part of the Seattle Film Festival. So they kind of coordinated that and everything. And anyway, they had a script reading. This was all part of Tom Skerritt's, Tom Skerritt was all involved in this. So it was really cool to see Tom Skerritt just walking. It's like, dude, that's a dude from Alien and Top Gun.
Seriously.
You just see him walking around, and it was cool. It was just he's just another dude. So he was really involved in that. It was a place down in the Pacific Market, Pike Place Market area called the Alibi Room. And I think it still might be there, but they would have these little script readings and stuff like that. And my script reading, I knew somebody, I got them a script, and they actually called in people from Hollywood to come in and check out the script. And it was a big deal. It was a big event. So that to me was very validating. Nothing ever happened with it. Actually, I just recently went back to that script and wrote it as a novel, which I'm going to release next year.
Very cool. Don, you have dogs, right?
I do have. They're two puppies right now. They're kind of in the other room. They're not at the barking stage yet.
I just assumed that was yours. I'm I don't know if because I saw I was on your Instagram and I saw them. They're really cute puppies. So
yeah, they are. They're definitely a handful. They kind of remind me of those 2 velociraptors in Jurassic Park that come into the kitchen and are
working together.
They're kind of like that a little bit. So they keep me on my toes, definitely. Ripley and Penny. Ripley named after Ellen Ripley from Alien, and Penny after Pennywise. So
there you go. Hell yeah.
And I'm trying to kind of find a work-life balance with them, because it's I go on I go on these kind of walks 2 and 3 hours. They just kind of, it gets me out of the house. It helps with my, it's kind of my antidepressant. And I also get a lot of phone calls done. I get a lot of story ideas. It just helps me think. Oh. And sometimes it's 10 miles. It just depends how I feel for that day. Some days my legs are dude, just give it up and go home. My legs are
turn around. You're done.
So, what do you do with a puppy at that time? So
I was going to ask 2 things. One, so you put these scripts out, you were involved in your local film community, and you got attention that way?
Yeah, I did. Seattle, at the time, kind of in the 90s, Seattle was still kind of an up-and-coming film market. So I thought, oh, well, that's kind of a logical step. And, because singles had been made there a few years before that. That was kind of before they taxed the shit out of the filmmakers. And they're like, fuck that. We're going to go north to Vancouver. See you later,
Maryland's good for that, too.
Then later, Seattle was like, no, we're sorry. Come back. But by that time, it was too late, Because I really thought, Seattle was going to kind of be Hollywood North. Except it went further north to Vancouver. So that didn't really pan out.
Your script. What was the first script you wrote? And then what was the one you wrote that got attention?
The script I wrote, the very first one I wrote was called Private Island, which is actually based on a line from one of my favorite movies, Psycho, where...
Had you seen Psycho by then?
Yeah, I'd seen Psycho. Yeah, I've probably seen Psycho probably 20 times now. So where, Marion Crane says, I'm looking for a private island, and I always like that name. And so it was kind of a metaphor script. It was kind of a road movie. I would say it was kind of a cross between Thelma and Louise and Paris, Texas. So,
oh, two of my favorites.
Yeah, but not as interesting or as good as any of those.
Sure.
I really didn't know what I was doing, and I was reading Sid Field's screenplay at the time, as well as taking courses. And the book would help me with structure, but in the second part of the book, he's got this Act 2, which is just this giant desert. It's like when Lawrence of Arabia, Lawrence has to cross that giant desert, in the middle of the day. Uh-huh. So it was like, what are you supposed to do in the second act? So it didn't really give you a lot of. He's like, well, you have a plot point here and here, and then it's like you got 60 pages of like, what do you do? So that was a bit of a challenge. And then just watching movies, reading scripts, I started kind of figuring out things and stuff like that. So that was helpful.
And then the growth to the one that was actually like seen more, where you're like, all right, you can kind of see that.
The first one I wrote was kind of a road movie thriller. The second one I wrote was a superhero movie based on a superhero I'd created, and it wasn't very good either. The third one was one I wanted to see. There was a movie called Monster on the Ocean Floor. It's an early Roger Corman movie. And I heard that the writer had written a script in 24 hours.
Roger Corman movie, it's probably true.
Exactly. And I was like, I want to see if I can write a low budget monster movie like a Roger Corman movie in 24 hours. And that was one day. If I used to temp all day, like I would go to offices, and like it was kind of fun since I was the new guy and I would just answer phones or type up stuff for people. Like people would just tell me their life stories. It was great. Like, and you couldn't do any wrong because you're the new guy. So if you screw up, it's like, I didn't know. So, and then when I'd come home, I'd walk up the hill and work at the Broadway Market Cinema up on Capitol Hill. And this happened to be one day that I was actually off all day. And I'm like, I'm going to write that damn script in 24 hours. And I did it. It was actually ended up being like a 67-page script. And I would have to I'd write for a little while. And then that was before I would outline. And then I would do what I called a thought walk. And I would walk around the block and then I'd write. But I did it. I didn't do anything with the script, but it was called The Terror of Elliott Bay, and it was about a giant octopus that comes in.
I love the name.
Yeah. I kind of took basically Jaws, my favorite movie, and then Rebel Without a Cause, because I wanted to make about 50s gangs and stuff like that. So there's these 50s gangs, and then there's this monster octopus, and it was pretty, yeah.
It's cool.
Anyway, I wrote it in 24 hours. At least I did and then the next script after that was Lord of the Yards. I was like, I want to take a movie, I wanted to write something like Stand By Me that had a little bit more autobiographical elements to it. And so I wrote the script and, because I think it had a lot of heart in it and the characters were definitely more real, because all the scripts I'd written previously were definitely genre kind of stuff. So this was kind of my first approach of writing something a little more serious, I guess.
More honest, would you say?
Exactly. I wanted to write something a little more honest. So that was the one that kind of got me noticed. And, it kind of was up for some awards and stuff like that. And it was one that, it was probably the one script I rewrote so many different ways. I tried to make it more commercial. I tried to do that. It was the one script I probably rewrote about 4 or 5 times from page one. It's the one that I really learned the process with. And then the script after that, I had a good friend of mine. He wrote a book called Fools Like Me. It was about a couple of boys growing up in Georgia in the 50s and the country music and stuff like that. And he let me adapt the book. And that was kind of a fun process. Just like I had the whole permission of the author to adapt the book. And then, I could figure out what works in a movie, what doesn't. So every script I wrote was, it was just a little, I didn't think anything would really come of them. Like I was more of just exercise in creating and learning the process.
Sure.
Do you assume you have to write 10 scripts? You're like, I have to get 10 under my belt and then.
Yeah. When I got my 10th one, I felt like, okay, it took about 10 scripts. So I was like, okay, I think I really know the structure. I think I know what to do. Then 10 more. Then, I was like, okay, I definitely am better at this. And then 10 more and then 10 more. I'm probably up to 55 now. So somewhere in that time, I wrote a couple that people were interested in. So, and the rest of them, it's just like, you know what? I just call it writing practice because that's what it is. And I'm still, I've been writing since I was 14. I'm still nowhere the writer that I want to be. It's still a learning process. I don't consider myself a master or anything else. I'm still learning the craft. I'm still, I just got some notes back from a book. I had a beta reader, and some of the things that she said were a lot of some of the early, stuff that I've gotten from other people, like, oh, you show too much up front. Oh, these characters are as developed as this character. So a lot of the stuff, like a lot of early mistakes I was making, I was like, wow, I'm still getting these kind of comments, and that's fine. I mean, but the great thing is, I mean, went for my walk today and I was thinking about her notes and I was like, oh man, it's got a murder mystery element. And she was like, you need more red herrings. And I thought of like, oh, this guy could do it. Like, this would be a great little blind alley that did it. And then so beta readers are really helpful like that, especially when you get some really good encouraging notes. And I love that.
Sure.
So,
I mean, if you're working in like a silo all the time.
Yeah. You can put out bad work because nobody checks you on.
You'll never know.
Yeah, that's one thing about, it's nice about having a publisher or a producer or somebody because, your stuff gets vetted all the time. So you're getting the best version of your work out there all the time. There's times I've disagreed with people, but a lot of times at the end of the day, I was like, you know what? They were actually right. That was just my ego. Like,
truth hurts.
So
truth hurts sometimes, but in a good way.
I know it does.
So when did you get I'm sorry, go ahead, Aaron. I was going to ask about novels.
I think you're going to ask the same thing I am.
Novel writing. How did that come about?
Okay. So the novels came out, try to make it as short as possible.
We got time. It's Aaron's job to edit it and make it interesting. So you just meander wherever you want to go and we'll make it work.
So during my Seattle years, I started working for a vanity press where people would come in, they'd pay to have their books, written, or they would write books and self-publish.
Yep.
And I'd written enough kind of stuff and edited stuff that I came in and became an editor, and that was really helpful because I really coached a lot of people. And one way to become a good writer is to become an editor because then you really see other people's mistakes. You start seeing your own mistakes, what you're doing wrong. And so I started actually ghostwriting. I ghostwrote a couple books, and then that got me a job at Becker and Mayer, which is in Bellevue, and they do like a lot of kids books. And I started out as a book editor there, just on the kids side. And one day I was working with Scholastic, and they wanted to do a scary story book, like 5 stories. It had a little hand lock, that you unlock. It was kind of a little fun thing.
That's cool.
And we were waiting for the stories to come in. I'm like, look, I was the editor. I was like, look, I've got a production team. I've got designers. We need the material. Like, we need the thing. And like, the writer hasn't come in. I was like, tell you what, let me write a story. And if you like it, and I turned in a story like, oh my God, you're the next R.L. Stein or something like that. Yeah, right.
Like, oh, please.
Yeah.
Please.
So I ended up writing the book, and it sold really well. And then they asked me to write a bunch more books. And just based on that, I was like, man, there's something about this narrative thing, that's not scripts. Because, scripts are a completely different animal than prose. I mean, completely different.
Yes.
I mean, scripts are more terse. They're actually a lot more akin to poetry, because you're taking as few words as possible and really making them into an image.
For the most part, every novel writer we speak to hates writing screenplays, or at least finds it to be a chore, a challenge. Not to hate it, but it's just not.
It has its pluses and minuses. At the same time, I have criticism about writing novels too, because you can go down blind alleys and you write yourself into a hole, and then what do you do with it? So there are pluses and minuses of each, but that kind of gave me the confidence to start writing. I wrote a script, and I'm not going to mention the title because I think it's such a good title, and I haven't published it yet, but I wrote a fantasy script, and then I really liked it. So I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to write this into a novel. So I wrote it. I think it was during I think it was like the first year that they had the writers, the November writers, is it Weineramo or whatever? That was the very first year I did that. And you had to turn in a 40,000 word manuscript. And so before my job, I would get up like 5 o'clock every morning, drive to Starbucks. And I liked Starbucks at that time because they had no Wi-Fi, so I couldn't get distracted. I would just write.
There you go.
So I'd work for a couple hours, and then I would go to my editing job every day, and that was like the funnest process. And when I completed that, I was like, wow, I can actually do this. Because to me, I've had friends who are novelists, and to me that was magic. Like, how do you write a book? Like that's scripts are nothing. I was like, but how to write a novel? Like I had no idea. So going from short stories to novels, and then I just started writing more novels. I kind of had an agent. She wasn't. I mean, she did her best, but she didn't really get my stuff in front of a lot of people, and so it got very frustrating because you write a script, a couple people see it, they don't want it, and then it's kind of dead. You're like, now what? At least with writing, writing a book, you can self-publish it, you can print it and hand it out to people. Right. So to me, that was a way of just having a certain autonomy that you didn't have to rely on the movie industry to make your work. So that's
a lot of the same for musicians. You know what I mean? You're at the mercy of whatever's prior to the internet, really.
Yeah, and that's really what self-publishing, like that was when there was like a lot of Amazon millionaires where people were just starting to self-publish and make a lot of money doing it. And I really wish I would have started that earlier and done that, but I didn't.
Yeah.
But nobody knows what's going to happen and what's not. So based on that, I kind of gave up on script writing. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to write novels from now on. And, I wrote Zombies, A Record of a Year of Infection. Huh? That book like really became popular, which is funny because at the time I was like, zombies, they're kind of dead, no pun intended. And what did I know? That was just before Walking Dead came out and everything. So, it came out just at the right time.
Yeah.
And, there was actually a couple of zombie cons in Seattle, and like I had my own table and I was like a rock star there. It was cool.
I listened to that as well. And I listened to the Audible of that. And that's really well done and it's cool. And of course now having seen The Last of Us, I'm like, there's so many elements to that I'm like, oh my God, they just go right from that.
Yeah. The audiobook is kind of interesting because they approached me this company approached me years later. I was like, how are you going to do an audiobook? It's a graphic novel. And they're like, no, well, you can just describe that. I was like, okay, so you can't line up the two. And then the thing is, there was certain scenes that I wanted to write that weren't in there. So it's kind of a standalone audio book because it doesn't follow the other book. It starts to for a little bit and then it veers off.
Yeah.
Because there were certain things I wanted to say, especially with the narrator kind of disappearing. I wanted to have him to kind of have a final speech and kind of his whole assessment of it and, what he missed about the world and stuff like that. I felt like it just didn't have that heart. So that was fun to write. And the first time I heard that, I was just like, I was sitting out in the middle of nowhere, like out, Walla Walla, you can go way out in the middle of nowhere. I was just listening to it and I was kind of getting freaked out. Like I'd forgot that I'd written the book and they have like little crackling fires.
Yeah.
Like this book's actually kind of creepy. So
it
really
that's
works. Pretty good if you could creep yourself out. I was like, they did a really good job with this. So, and, we talked about doing a sequel where it was just going to be an audio book all by itself. And that never came to pass. I think they only offered like $1,000 to do it, which at the time I just kind of balked. But now I'm like, who cares? It would have taken me a month and like it's $1,000. It's at least it'd still be out there, like I'm kind of mad at myself for thinking like, that's nothing, So I wish I would have done it, because I've been paid a lot less writing podcasts for people, So
you get paid a lot less to do a lot more work.
Exactly. So I know I kind of wish I would have done an audio only book. I actually wrote a script and everything. I kind of, I wanted to kind of build the universe out a little bit more, but oh well.
Yeah.
And then for a while there was movie interest. I was like, hey, if I can maybe take the first crack at the screenplay. So I wrote a treatment, and I expanded on that because I wrote a lot more of the material that was actually used in the book. I didn't have any say in the editorial process. That was all done without me. And they cut out a lot of stuff that I really liked. So I put it all back in there. And then Becker and Mayer, in their infinite wisdom, they didn't understand how books are optioned. People don't just buy books outright. You option them.
Okay.
So they wanted like $100,000 nobody's going to pay $100,000 for the rights to that book.
Right.
They could option it, so they killed that whole deal because we could have made several movies from that. That was like 2010. And I was just like, I was so frustrated with it because I was like, that was my first big shot. And I was at the mercy of the publisher because I can't do anything without their say so. So that was like the first big, like, wow, this is huge. And this was for a tiny company. They used to be called Cinetel Films. They're called something else now. But at the time they were interested in the book and they've done a lot of, kind of campy movies and stuff like that. I think they sold the company and changed something else, but the time that was really exciting. So, and it kind of just validated me more like, wow, people are interested in my work. So I just kept, doing it. I mean, I'd still write if people paid me or not. It's just what I do. So
were you able to see that at the time that you're like, no, this is not how this should be done? And it was frustrating in that level? Or is it like now you look back and you're like, oh, if I'd only known I would have done this, or,
Oh, absolutely.
It's gotta be really frustrating to be that close to it and then be like, oh, sorry, kind of dropped the ball on that one.
It's hard to not be able to have your own work. And since then, I have worked with publishers and stuff like that, but having your own publishing company and stuff like that, I just hate giving the keys to somebody else.
Yeah.
Especially when they don't know
I can understand that.
how the business works and stuff like that. I'd rather just have, full autonomy, Me and my lawyer can decide what the price is and stuff like that. So.
Right.
But you've had plenty of other opportunities. So I made some notes. I was looking up some of your stuff. Yeah. First of all, you've worked with R.L. Stine?
I did, yeah. I didn't work with him directly, but there's an author, another wall-to-wall author, his name's Patrick Carman, and he approached me and he was like, hey, I need help with Bob's, podcast. I was like, Bob? He's like, Bob Stein. I was like, oh, R.L. Stine. Okay, yeah, I don't know what's Bob, but he knows him. And it was supposed to be like for the vaults of R.L. Stine, and it was supposed to be these little stories. And it was just like, really, just you could pretty much do whatever you want, just have a twist ending. It's got to be appropriate for kids. And that became, I had to write like 5 scripts a week, which was crazy. I mean, they're not long scripts. They're like ideally around 1,500 words, 1,000 to 1,500 words, something like that. Not long, but like coming up with 5 original stories every week for years. Right. So I really grew from that experience. For one, it's R.L. Stine, and I'm kind of writing in his voice, and people are assuming it's his work, but it's not.
Right.
And eventually they changed it to Ivy's Chilling Stories, I think, to kind of delineate from the two. But it was fun because there was this character, Ivy. They wanted it to be like the Crypt Keeper, and I built this whole backstory for her. I was like, she's such a one-dimensional character. And it was fun to just come up with, I had a lot of stories that I never used. I pulled those out of the files. I would find, like true life, stuff like that, like the Bandage Man of Cannon Beach. I'd find little weird things like that. I mean, whatever I could find, what wasn't nailed down, I would grab it, because I used to read that stuff when I was a kid, like about the Mothman and Sasquatch, that shit.
I was just going to say the Mothman. Yes.
It would scare the shit out of me, like totally terrified me. Yeah. So I wanted to kind of get into that, write some of that. So that was a great experience. And just, there was really nothing else I could do because I had no other time but to write those things.
How long did you do that?
I did that from 2021 to 2023. So, and then they just kind of, I don't know what happened. I think they just kind of ran out of money. So,
well, it probably kind of runs its course,
Yeah, they did. Now they actually are doing kind of smart. Like the listeners started like wanting to hear their story ideas. So they just take those and they write them up and then they just perform them. So they don't have to pay a writer to do it, I guess. I mean, it's kind of smart. That way kids...
Crowdsource.
Yeah, because that way they can like, oh, I can hear my story now. So, and I started to do that at the end. And it was kind of fun taking, because sometimes kids get these really crazy ideas where things don't exactly add up. And you're like, how do I make this work with all these moving pieces? So that was kind of fun. But that was just it was a really great experience to just be on a deadline all the time. And I felt my writing really grew from that.
I mean, that's like writing for Saturday Night Live or something.
It was.
Just that intensity.
Exactly. Yeah. They had to be done. Like I had to turn them in Friday. Every Friday they had to be turned in because they had to be edited. They had to be recorded and all that. So it was, there was no room for error at all. It was an exciting time. It was really fun. At the same time, I'm glad I'm not doing it anymore.
Where did that line up with the Dark Side Drive stuff that you were doing?
Oh, Dark Side Drive actually came before that.
Okay.
Yeah, my nephew and I, and he actually told me, I just talked to him on the phone today, Justin Guild. He told me Dark Side Drive has really kind of found a new audience. You know, one day, I can't remember how it started. He was working at a station in Calgary, and he wanted to do some kind of anthology series. And it's funny, I actually had a book. I can't remember the author. I just remember the spine. It just said Dark Side on it. And one day I was laying in bed. I was like, Dark Side Drive. And then I just imagined, I was kind of thinking like Night Gallery, where each portrait has there's a story there. And I was thinking,
Yeah.
Dark Side Drive, like every house on this street has a different story.
Yeah.
I was trying to ape,
I like it.
I was trying to ape, Rod Serling and more Night Gallery than Twilight Zone. So that was really fun to write. And that was a very strict structure. They had to be 30 minutes. We figured out the scripts had to be about 4,000 words read. They would come in about 30 minutes. So that was a really fun structure to do too.
And that was produced. So when I was looking it up, I was like, oh my gosh, this is like a radio play, which is like a cool throwback thing when you see it. And then they did for, I guess, the second season, they did the YouTube like 3D camera thing.
Right.
So then it was like you can actually see it in the studio, like them shaking boxes
I wrote the first season all by myself.
Okay.
And then I was like, I can't do a second season. I'm like, that's too much. So I wrote I think the opening episode, and then I had a couple of story ideas that I gave, and then like Roadkill and a couple of those were my story ideas. And then I was like, can you have somebody else write those? I kind of got burnt out on it.
Yeah.
But I know I'd love to bring that back. And a lot of people are like, ew, I hate it's old timey. But that was at the time we had all this library of music that was free. So I was like, why not use that? But it would be fun to go back and maybe do some more, update them. But I don't know if that'll happen.
Switch it up. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got to be intense too, writing for that. I don't know. It's like, because on the side, it talks about like the process that went into it and the amount of rehearsing
they do it
and all
live.
that.
They do it live too. Like Justin likes to have everybody in the room. Nobody phones it in. Like he likes to have everybody in there and have as a group and do it that way. So they play off each other. It's just like a real radio play.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's a cool like throwback kind of thing.
Like Orson Welles.
Absolutely. Yeah. Mercury Theater, 1938. That was a big influence. Yeah.
It's a little bit, spoiler alert, but, end of Killers of the Flower Moon, where at the very end, they do the whole like end scene is like the radio play. I was like, oh my gosh, what a weird twisting sort of thing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I haven't gotten around to watching that yet. Is it worth it?
It's really long. Took us 2 nights to watch it.
That's what's kept me from watching it.
Yeah, you might have to watch it like almost as like TV series, just like 45 minutes at a time or something like that.
Yeah, it's good.
We did one cut.
Right.
Yeah, we did one. It was called Dead Air, and it was like a murder mystery as they're recording. We thought it'd be kind of meta and stuff like that. So
cool.
That is cool.
Know.
Very cool. Yeah,
Right.
actually, since we had a little extra time today, I went back and just like while I was doing my day job, was listening to a couple more. So
yeah.
I listened to the one about Under the Floorboards. That was sort of like the Telltale Heart meets like Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah, that one was inspired by John Wayne Gacy because I think I'd watched a documentary and I was like, what if all these bodies that he has buried under his house suddenly, like there was a zombie apocalypse and they all came back to life. I was like, that could actually be kind of cool. I remember just sitting in my car and like, man, that would be a good story. So boom, it was born. So
that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, it was fun.
And it's a little vengeance to the, to the victims to get the, to get their murderer. So I thought, hey, why not? So can't go wrong with serial killers and zombies. I mean, come on, So
it's good. I enjoyed it. Everything had like a little twist to it. So it's cool.
Yeah.
The amount of work that you are putting out, I mean, is by default going to land you a number of opportunities if you're just out there all the time. And that's always what interests me about people who are just in the right place at the right time, but like all the time.
Yeah. It takes a while to get you really have to build a body of work. You want a body of work and then it's opportunity, it's really opportunity. I knew this one person who knew this person who knew this person that got me to this person. I mean, that's happened a lot. So, right now I have a couple of producers I work with and it's just a dream relationship because they have like 5 or 6 movies they're developing right now.
Of yours?
And
I was going to say, you've got a bunch of stuff on IMDb.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know how much you're actually in play, but there's an impressive list.
There's a few in play. Joe Boomer's in play in Vertigo, Butcher's War, another one called Plunge. I just finished another one called Rage, and I lose track. I mean, and then I'm actually writing a couple Tubi originals too. So those are really fun.
They're like the only service that has been like crushing in the past year.
They have been. I've ghostwritten a few scripts for people too. A few people came out to me and when I told them I ghost wrote, they're like, their eyes would light up. And I'm like, I honestly don't care about credit. I just want the money. And they give me an idea and I write it and they go film it and it's great. So
the outlet just to get it out there.
Exactly. It is because, a Tubi script you just bang out in a few weeks. I mean, it's nothing. You just boom. It's an 80-page script. You write it, I usually write it in a week or 10 days. And I know that sounds really terrible, but
But if you've written so many scripts and deadlines, that's...
If you write a lot, it doesn't take you that long. I mean, I try to write, 1,500 to 2,000 words a day. So, I mean, and script pages, scripts it's about 1,000 words per 5 pages. So you do the math, if you write 1,500 words, I mean, you've already, written 15 pages or so. So, I mean, yeah, when you're writing novels, it's different because you can write thousands of words and you only done a couple of pages. Where scripts, just especially for writing dialogue, it's like you're like woo, like freestyle skiing, So novels can be a bit of a slog where you just novels have
get lost in it.
Yeah, the where you can just live in the world and you can just you're the set decorator, you're the director, you're the art director, you're the actor, you're doing every part of it. So I think there's a little bit more of and at the end of the day, it's yours. And although you'll get an editor and a copy editor, you're not going to get a lot of notes as far as changing major things. So it's still really your work, where novels, I mean, I've had to change it's a brother and sister. Let's have it as a father and daughter. And that's reworking the whole script, crazy stuff like that. And that's just for casting purposes. Cause they're we can't actually find anybody to play this older brother. If we get an older actor, we can actually, that's movies, it's all about casting. So movies nowadays, it's we need an older male actor who could be in it at least 30% of the time. So we can get somebody with a name cast. I mean, it's all tricks that way. So.
Wow. They've usually got someone in mind already.
Exactly.
Is it Tom Skerritt?
Yeah. I don't know. I think he's in his 80s
yeah,
now.
He's
I don't know if he's doing much.
There.
He's not doing much work, but it'd be great to get Tom Skerritt for something. But he's probably winding down now.
Probably. You should reach out, bring him back around full circle.
I know he's been in every movie. I would totally write something for Tom Skerritt if you do it, but I don't really know him that well. So
right. So when you're writing ghost scripts, how does that work? Are under contract? Can you not talk about it?
I wouldn't reveal who I wrote them for, but I would just say that often I'll get a premise. Sometimes I've gotten scripts, and some of the scripts were so bad, it took me 2 days to even try to figure out what they were trying to say. And a lot of times I'll okay, I'm going to take the gist of this. And what I'll do is I'll typically write, a beat sheet. I do a lot of beat sheets. I write for Save the Cat too. So I'm really...
That's actually how I found you.
Oh, okay. I was
what's your beat sheet for Poltergeist? I was looking up
awesome.
something for a script I was working on. And I was like, God, I'm stuck at this part and I really need something. And Poltergeist came to mind.
Awesome. That's the way a lot of people find me. Yeah. It's funny because, I'll get producers and stuff. They'll do that. And I love those beat sheets. I wrote one for Neil Marshall's The Descent, which actually he signed off on. He was I'm friends with him on Facebook. And he actually this is a great beat sheet. I was I actually got approval from the writer and director. So cool. That was great.
That is cool.
And sometimes I'll go back to that one, what's the beats on that? So, and it's kind of nice because in your mind, after I break down a movie, and I mean, it takes me days to write these beat sheets because I watch the movie and then I rewatch it and and beat sheets really are an interpretation. I don't even know if I'm doing them, right. It's not 100%. You're trying to do your best interpretation, but that's for something that's already produced. But something that's not. Most of the time when I start, what's the opening image and the final image? I'll start with that. Who's this character at the beginning? Who's this character at the end? How have they changed? And then I kind of just merge those two together. Okay, well, if they're this person here and they're completely different from this person here, then how did that become? And then I kind of work my way towards the middle. So you get a really good character arc and a definite transformation if you can, or either that or that character doesn't change. But in the case of Sling Blade, he doesn't change, but every character around him changes. So that works too, or Pollyanna or one of those. I mean, but most time you have your character going from A to B to C to D, I
got to imagine some of them are a lot harder to do, if you're trying to determine the inciting incident or the midpoint, and
Absolutely.
It could be one of 5 things,
Absolutely. Yeah. All the best catalysts are the inciting incident. Same thing. It's usually when the bottom just drops out of the character, they just want to be left alone and going on with their life. And then the bottom just drops out and they're like, oh shit, what do I do now?
Right.
And then there's the debate, like, what do I do? And then the breaking two is when they decide they have to take action, whether they want to or not. It's like, okay, well, that's kind of their call to adventure, using Campbellian, terms. That's their call to adventure. They're like, okay, well, I don't want to do this journey, but now I have to. So here we go, So after much debating, they go on the journey, and we go into that special world of trials and antagonists and allies. So
wasn't it Jeff Howard who said that he did the beat sheets for Tommy Boy is virtually the same as Schindler's List.
Yes.
Like Schindler's List and Tommy Boy are like, he's like, if you go, they're like the same movies. Like it's just the way that they kind of progress.
Tommy Boy would be that's a buddy love story, but since it's a road movie, it's a buddy fleece movie. I don't know if Schindler's List would really line up for that, but I would have to look.
I don't think it was the style. It might have just been like the beats.
Maybe the beats for it. Yeah, the pacing of it and all that. Yeah,
that totally does. Totally. Alien and Jaws are the same movie. They're exactly the same movie. So a lot of the beats for those movies line up, exactly. So, and now in more movies now, I can totally sometimes, if the movie's not exactly very well written, I can really see. The thing was, when you write a movie, you don't want your beats to stand out. You want it to be organic. You don't want people to like, oh, here's the breaking two. Oh, here's the all's lost. Like, I don't.
Yeah, you want to hide the seams. Right?
I know. I don't. When I watch a movie, I want to forget all that. But if the movie's not doing it, like, I start noticing it. It's very obvious.
Right. It's in 3, 2, 1, here it comes.
Exactly. You want it to be, you want it to feel organic. Like sometimes you'll be watching like a rom-com or something like that, and they'll, like the bad guys close in part, they'll suddenly get into a fight, and it doesn't feel organic to it. It's just like, that's what's supposed to happen. They have to break up so they come back together. So you want to make that happen as organically as possible, and with certain verisimilitude.
So the Claire series, right? So you have Claire at 16, 17. Did you know that was going to be the arc?
Claire at 16, Claire at 17, Claire at 18. And a lot of people think Claire at 18 is the last book, but actually the last one's going to be called Claire in Present Danger.
I love that title.
Yeah. And I'm going to be publishing that one myself because the publisher was like, yeah, I think we're done with Claire. And I'm like, all right. So,
but did the publisher hear that title?
They did, yeah. But I think they're a little overwhelmed right now. They changed hands, and I'm going to tell on them. So like, I turned in my book, Claire at 18, like March of 2023. And I didn't get any notes or any feedback or anything until March of 2024. That's this year, right? So,
yeah.
And
that's
then,
this year. Yep.
Like I had like not even 2 months, like to completely rework the book and then get it out there. And I'm really not happy with the result. So I'm actually, I got all my audiobook rights back. And I'm going to try to I'm working on getting my book rights back because there's certain things I want to change in the books, and the formatting is off. And the thing is, I can't run sales and stuff like that. I'm kind of at the mercy of the publishers. So I have my own company, Brambleberry Books. My Snowblind novel, which was originally published in 2015 by a Seattle company. They went under, and then I started Brambleberry Books in 2016 just to get the book out there. And the minute the book got out there, it got optioned from a company.
Is that in development, or is that just sort of floating out there?
That has a long and sordid history. It was in development. We had Carl Urban, who's Billy Butcher and the Boys attached to it. We had this guy, Forrest Goodluck, who played Leonardo DiCaprio's son in The Revenant. And then we had somebody from Twilight in there. I can't remember her name. Anyway, it was sold and it was about to go to production. They went to Romania. They found all the locations and everything like that. And then COVID hit. And it went into turnaround, and then they just decided they didn't want to do it. So it went to another Canadian company. They optioned it. That stood in development hell for a couple of years. And then those producers went to BuzzFeed and decided they just want to do rom-coms. They didn't want to do any thrillers. However, the caveat is there's a director, writer-director named Jason Bork, who wrote a really good script, and he wrote this on spec. He didn't get paid anything. I've read it. I gave him some notes. He obviously hadn't served in the military, so there was a lot of mistakes of military stuff, like things people would say or do. It got fixed, and right now we're shopping it around. But that was 2016 when the first go around, so it'll be like 9 years.
Wow.
I got a couple of producers that are looking at it right now, and by the time it ever gets produced or anything, I mean, that'll be like 10 years if I'm lucky. So
good Lord.
And then when I wrote that, I was like, I originally wrote it as a one-off, and I was like, there's actually more to this story than that. So I wrote a prequel, which eventually I'll get out there. And then I wrote possibly a couple of sequels. We'll see. I'm kind of getting out of book writing a little bit because there's the artistic fulfillment of book writing, which is more than script writing, but the income level, I mean, it takes a good year to get a book out. It really does. And I can write a script in, 4 to 6 weeks and get paid way more money than I'll ever get on a book, and the only way I really make money on books like Claire at 16, I made decent money on it, but really it was the option. And then when the movie was made, that's where I make all my money, is really book sales. So every author who writes books hopes they get a movie sale because you get options, you get, stuff like that. And Claire actually, made decent
money. Do you get any part of the,
back end?
I mean, yeah, it's all got to come from the back end, but is any of it coming from the film, or is this all trickling down into book sales?
As far as Claire, what's St. Clair, and we're still trying to find a distributor for that.
I was trying to find that movie and not available anywhere.
Well, I can give you some details about what happened with that, but there's no back end on that. I just got paid a flat fee, and but no back end points because I don't think it's going to be theatrical anyway. But from what I understand, the company who had St. Clair produced it they're called Chicken Soup for the Soul Productions. Anyway, they had
seems like a good fit.
Under their umbrella, they had a bunch of companies, and one of them was called Screen Media. Well, Screen Media really thought that, and I can't get sued for this because this is public knowledge. I mean, so Screen Media thought that Redbox was going to be the next big thing. A little too late. They thought, well, because of the pandemic and everything like that, people are just going to be, getting movies.
Right.
So and Redbox was already had one foot in the grave. So they purchased Redbox, and it went down like the Titanic.
Oh God!
So
anchored.
St. Clair went with it. Fortunately, and I was told by one of the producers, the big guy, that certain paperwork hadn't got signed, and so the movie isn't going to go down with a ship. So they had just had to find another production company, another distribution company, and from what I understand, they found it. I think international rights are okay. It was just the domestic rights. Okay. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll see it. It has premiered in certain places. It was in Italy. It was in Germany. It was in England. So
can you not show it in like a festival? Can you put it in a film festival stuff around?
Yeah, it's been in film festivals.
Okay,
yeah, it's been in 3 film festivals. I didn't go to any of them. I just
why? But you've seen it.
I don't. First of all, I don't have a working passport right now, so part of me was like, you know what? I'm going to wait till there's an American premiere because then everybody will be there. But I don't think an American premiere is going to happen. And I really wish I would have went to the Italy premiere because I heard it was awesome. And you had Rebecca De Mornay was there. Bella Thorne was there. The director, Mitzi Pironi, was there. So, that would have been amazing
cool.
to do that. But at the same time, part of me is like, as the author of the book, you're not really valued that much. They get your work and then they turn it into the movie they want to turn it into. I mean, I wasn't invited to be on the set or anything like that, which at the time I was kind of pissed. I was like, dude, this is my first, I almost just went to Louisville and showed up, but same time, I was so kind of new to this, and I would have paid my own way and everything. It wasn't in the budget to pay me there, but I would have paid my own way and went and just hung out, with a cast for a day or something. But I get this weird thing that, like, they don't really want you around.
I was just about to say, you feel like a little bit uninvited. You're like,
I just want you around.
I just want you to be like, hey, come check it out. We care about what you have.
Yeah.
Right.
It's partly surprising to me because you've created this thing that is giving them all jobs. You're the brains behind it all. But on the other hand, I've got to imagine there have been writers before that show up on set and just have a million notes and want to get involved.
Yeah. It was, I think, when Stanley Kubrick made Full Metal Jacket, the writer for that, I can't remember his name now, but he was a huge pain in the ass, and Stanley Kubrick barred him from the set, and he was coming in in disguise and things like that. So
oh my God.
Yeah, Stanley Kubrick, a famous collaborator.
Exactly. Right? Yeah. So I think people are just afraid, writers are a little crazy. We're going to be doing things to their baby, so we don't want them around. So,
gotcha.
So it's totally fine. I get it. It's fine. I'm over it. But the time I was a little miffed. I was like, I just want to show up and meet Claire and hang out and stuff like that. But it's cool. But I mean, how lucky am I to
and you do what
Bella
you love.
Thorne, Ryan Phillippe, Frank Whaley, who was one of my favorites in the cast. He plays Mailman Bob, and the scenes between him and Bella really capture my book.
Well, I'm still going to keep an eye out for it.
Yeah.
Talking about your writing process a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
Ken, do you want to jump in here?
Yeah, one of the things I was looking up. Well, I would say ever since we interviewed Paul Tremblay.
I love Paul's work.
Oh, he's great. But I randomly, I was like, let me put on Spotify, see if there's anything in here. And I found there's actually another Paul Tremblay who does really weird avant-garde synth dance stuff.
Interesting.
Really
okay.
Weird. I was like,
wow.
I'm guessing this is not you. And he's like, yeah, it's not me.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, cool.
Yeah.
So anyway, I looked up on Spotify and I saw that you have lots of playlists out there. So I'm following you now. But they're all very atmospheric, it seems like.
Oh, yeah.
Are you somebody that puts on something like that for when you're writing? Because it's like horror anthology.
Yeah, every project I do, I make a playlist for it. That to me is part of the process. Is just music I'm gonna, and a lot of times I don't even use those playlists. One playlist I did do though, was for a script I wrote called Bad Trip. That title since changed. That's a really good playlist, but I hardly ever used it. But some of my I keep private because I don't want people to see the title of it or something like that. But some of mine I'm never going to do anything with this. I'll just put it public. But making the playlist is as much of the process as anything.
So you make the playlist. So you're saying you don't even I was just picturing you putting on there's a lot of weird Western stuff or the Poltergeist, the soundtrack, that kind of thing. Putting that on while it's while you're in the creative process.
Oh, absolutely. And sometimes a lot of tracks, it's hard to listen to just the whole soundtrack because the moods change. Sometimes I'll find one track and it might even be 2 minutes, but I'll loop it 14 times because it just gets you in that zone. And it just I know there's one at prison, I think it's called Prison Montage, and it's from the John Carpenter Halloween 2018 soundtrack.
Okay.
And that track is so good. I think it's one of the best ones he's ever written. Another one I love, it's called Dark and Long. Underworld.
Okay.
I've listened to that track probably 2,000 times because it's just that dun, 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 dun. It's just that progression with a beat. I get so much writing done to that track. That is probably my number one writing track. It's the best track because it's not too thematic and it just has that progression.
Just keeps going.
And it's about 7 or 8 minutes long. So looping it, if it's 7 minutes, Underworld, Dark and Long, I cannot recommend that track enough for any creative work because it just, if you're folding laundry or doing, whatever, it's a great track.
That's awesome. I'm writing it down.
I'm going to check these out tomorrow.
Yeah.
Do you need scores or can you listen to stuff words?
I do scores. My favorite people are Jerry Goldsmith, Ennio Morricone, James Horner, John Williams, John Barry. Some of the newer I like some of the newer stuff. I still love my older guys, but there's some newer stuff out there that's pretty good. There's a group called Tom and Andy. It's all one word, Tom and Andy. Okay. Their stuff is great. They've got one track called The Ascent. It's called Ascent. It's from the 47 Meters Down.
Oh,
beautiful. Yeah. That's one of my favorite tracks ever. I love their work a lot because it's very moody and atmospheric. And I wrote my last script, Plunge, mostly to their music, mostly because I wanted that survival thriller vibe like 47 Meters Down. But I love their work. I hope someday another one's I want to shout out to him because he's a friend. on Facebook and Instagram is Bill Brown, and he did that was a Bella Thorne movie called Infamous, and the music for that is some of the best I've ever heard. And writing wise, there's a couple of popular like vocal tracks. I take those out. Like that's another thing is if you make playlists, like if you just listen to a score, you're at the mercy of like sometimes they'll have vocal numbers, and there's nothing worse than like trying to write like vocal
because I'm yelling at me.
So right. I could take those out, but yeah, Infamous by Bill Brown, great. A lot of people probably haven't seen that movie, but man, great score, just great score to write to. So
that's funny. Scores aren't something I listen to much. I always like having music on in the background, and it kind of doesn't affect me. But I really like Carter Burwell.
Carter Burwell's amazing. Like, and then one of his first scores was, Blood Simple, I think was his first score. Yeah. That thing is just haunting. But yeah, his scores are great. Barton Fink. I mean, he does all the Coen Brothers stuff. His score for
Raising Arizona is probably my favorite of his.
Raising Arizona. His score for True Grit is absolutely, especially Crossing the River. That track is so I love his work. His work is incredible. And it's funny because I heard he was actually going to be an architect or something like that. Like at the last minute, the Coen Brothers kind of hired him, and thank God they did because his whole career shift from that. Yeah, his work is amazing. Yeah, Adaptation, that was a good score for his.
Oh yeah.
I watch that movie all the time too because that's probably that one and Barton Fink are two of my favorites for the writing process, like how frustrating the writing process is. And I love, especially in Adaptation, that his dipshit brother's named Donald, which is my name, and it's like, and he's the one. Like I feel like on both aspects of that character, I'm kind of the serious. Like, oh no, it's got to be art, it's got to be this, and then I'm also the dipshit one who's like, no, make it fun and entertaining and
find success. Yeah,
I kind of like both aspects of that character, so I kind of love that. But I watch that movie at least once a year because it says so much about the writing process.
That's cool. I mean, so you've got influences all over the place. Yeah, even though you're writing mostly horror thriller.
Horror thriller, those are my jam. Horror thriller, crime are probably my three favorite genres. Like I love film noir, but I do, I've written a couple of westerns. I love writing westerns. Just
you have a bunch of western playlists, which sort of stood out to me. I'm like, this is westerns. Out on the range.
I like weird western. They have to be weird. There might have to be supernatural, like High Plains Drifter for a few dollars more. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I like the weird stuff. Less of the the kind of the more the Gene Autry kind of stuff. It's got to have a weird premise, a little bit gothic, a little bit, I like to call them Baroque Westerns. So they have to have a kind of a Baroque sensibility. They're fun to write because they're all very basic. They're about the character and they're about you can't stop and use a cell phone, and you have to figure out okay, well, what would a parking garage be here? Oh, it's a livery stable. So I don't know. There's something very pure about writing the Western. And I don't know. I love them. I've written 2 Western scripts that probably will never see the light of day, but I had a great time writing them. And so if I could write an Unforgiven, I mean, I would be set, because to me, that one and Outlaw Josie Wales are probably 2 of the greatest ones. But I think Unforgiven is one of those movies that kind of transcended the genre.
Yeah. Almost too much for me. Definitely. I saw it when I think I was too young to appreciate it.
Yeah.
Why are they just shooting people?
That's a heavy one.
What's going on there?
Yeah, it's that kind of postmodern Western. It's very noirish. It mostly takes place at night, very dark themes.
Definitely.
And probably a lot more the way the Old West really was, There just wasn't a lot of nice people there.
Yeah, it's very quiet kind of in its way.
Exactly.
Treasure of the Sierra Madre has always been one of my favorites.
That is one of my favorite. Yeah, that's my favorite. That Bogey movie and In a Lonely Place where he plays a screenwriter who's suspected of murder. Those are my 2 favorite Bogey because they're so complex and he's not exactly the most likable character, but he's so fascinating to watch. And I love, those are my 2 favorite Bogey movies.
Yeah. I love the tight, confined stories and,
absolutely,
something that is going to just tear everyone apart.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Snowblind is like that for me. I just wanted 4 Army Rangers who are in a room and kind of slowly losing their minds, So to me, those are the funnest because they're so claustrophobic. And producers love those because there's not a location, a lot of locations for actors.
We're just doing it all here.
So I would say for a lot of people who are starting out, high concept, few characters, and then, make it about survival. I mean, if you write those well enough, producers will hunt you down to find those scripts. So
really,
I mean, it's like what's it, The Fog, or no, what am I thinking of? The Stephen King, the one that takes place in the grocery store.
Oh, The Mist.
The Mist.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, The Mist, where it's like,
Mist.
so
Yeah.
good. Like I read the story. I probably read the story 3 times before I saw the movie.
Oh, I did. Yeah, I did too. Yeah.
And
I
I'm
think
like,
that was in Skeleton Crew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, but you see the movie, they're so small. Like, it's just the people trying to survive just in the.
Exactly. Yeah. Those are my favorite, because then you can really, you've got these characters and they all represent, society. And Jaws, my favorite part of Jaws is when they go out on the boat, because it's really a little macrocosm of society. You've got the blue collar worker, you got, you got Quint, you got the white collar worker who's Hooper. And of course, they're at each other's throats. And you got the lawman who's kind of between them to kind of keep law and order, which is Brody. And it's like the perfect metaphor. Like they all have to work together, to try to kill this common enemy, which normally they wouldn't ever be caught dead hanging out with each other. But like they have to come together for this common goal. So
it's such a perfect theme.
Yeah, absolutely. But you had mentioned writing process, and probably the best writing process I think was for Claire at 16. I just had never really seen a really interesting female serial killer story before. And I was actually working at, I can't remember the name of the company, but they used to sell car insurance basically. So I had to be at work at like 8:00 in the morning. So, and I've done so many different jobs to support my writing. I've worked at grocery stores. I've worked at convenience stores. I've worked every kind of job. A lot of times I don't like to do I've done a lot of copywriting jobs, but then I don't like to be in front of the computer all the time, because that kind of sucks your soul away.
Balance, right?
But I've romanced people's, I've worked for Brooks Running. I've worked for Cutter and Buck. I've written like copy for tennis shoes, everything, whatever it could to support my writing. But I worked for this company and I had to be there at 8 a.m. So I would I built this little sleep cave. Like I had to be in bed by 10 o'clock. I had a fan on. And I had to sleep, and I would get up at 5. And then, sometimes I was really tired. And it's like, look, asshole, you're going to get up and you're going to write this fucking book, because if you're not, you're going to be stuck at this fucking job the rest of your life. So get the fuck up and write. So I had to go a little drill sergeant on my ass.
Yeah.
So, but that was the best, because in 6 weeks I had a whole book, and I would get up, I would write for, an hour to 90 minutes a day, take a shower, have breakfast. And then on my drive to work, I would kind of think of okay, and when I wrote Claire, I was like, I didn't really write any beat sheet or anything for that one. I was just like, okay, what fucked up thing can happen next? And then I would just or right at the end of my writing, I would just put little bullet points like, okay, here's the things that are happening. So the minute I would start the next day, there wasn't any me trying to figure out what would happen, because that's what you don't want ever to happen. You always have to stop when the writing is going well. Never stop on a problem. Always leave a little bit of a landing strip.
Really?
So start early. If you know where you're going, stop early, because if you stop at a problem, you're just going to sit there in the next day and then you're screwed. Either that, or if you have the problem, right past the problem. Okay, I don't know what's going to happen here, but I know what happens on the next scene or the next 2 scenes. So I'll go and write that scene. And then by the time I get that, I've pretty much figured out the problem, or, I don't really even need that scene, or, So sometimes just keep writing, whatever it is, just keep going forward. That's all you can do. You can always change it. Nobody has to see it. That's the thing, is people think this is the one draft. No, it's not. There's going to be several drafts, and you're really going to discover it with every draft. So just write what you feel at the time. Or sometimes I'll just write completely out of order. I feel I'm angry one day, so I'll write an angry scene, or I'm sad one day, I'll write a sad scene. I don't feel like I have a happy scene, but I don't feel like writing because I don't feel happy. So I'll write this instead. And then I'll go back and write the happy scene or something like that. So you don't have to write in order at all.
Yeah.
When you rewrite, do you find yourself punching up or punching down?
Punching up.
How big do you go the first time?
It really depends. Usually, as long as I can nail the structure. If the structure is wrong, then you got problems. That's why I really started beat sheeting, because I was if I know the structure is sound, then I can just change the scenes or the chapters within it. And it kind of takes a lot of the hard work out of that.
Yes.
Usually, I punch up as far as make the dialogue sharper. If there's anywhere I can get, character, or if I can get more of, and a lot of times I was like, Don, these characters are way superficial. What's going on inside them? That's mostly more in my books than scripts. But then I start okay, what is their story here? Why are they doing this? And sometimes you don't really know when you're writing the first draft. You're still figuring that out. So the second time, it's already on there, then you can be like, oh, maybe this is why this happened.
Yeah.
And especially in books, when you're writing books, it's a lot like that because you can label every scene, you can have a beat sheet, all that stuff. But you know what? A lot of times that goes out the window. You'll kind of come to a new way of doing it. And then sometimes my second Usher House book, which I'm going to release next year, Usher House Reckoning.
Oh, cool.
I actually wrote a really good beat sheet. And then I was like, you know what? I don't need the beat sheet. And then I went way off and I wrote thousands and thousands of words. I'm like, you know what? This isn't working. Where's the beat sheet? I had to come back to it.
Yeah.
And I kind of
kept
a roadmap.
Those.
Yeah. I saved those scenes. I just put them in a little thing, but it's like, I wrote thousands of words of just stuff that I'm never going to use. So
for the Usher, I was going to ask about that. Obviously has a lot of the Fall of the House of Usher kind of thing in there. But like, where did you sort of draw the line? Because obviously it doesn't follow the storyline at all, really. But it's sort of set in the zone. Like, that was fun.
Yeah, that was actually, I wrote another script for somebody. It was kind of a paranormal romance script, and that's not really my genre. To be honest, it was really like Twilight fan fiction. But anyway, this
ghostwriting. Ghostwriting for somebody?
I didn't ghostwrite this. It was a script I wrote, and then the producer and the director, kind of had a falling out, and she kind of threw me under the bus. But anyway, I wrote the script, and it was very romancy, and I don't really write that kind of stuff. But the author loved it. She told me she cried, and in a good way, not like in a bad way. Like, what? Wow. And I only had when I wrote it, I only had about 4 weeks to write this whole script, and the book's like 400 pages. So I wrote the script, and then I remembered I had a script that I wrote called Usher House, and I was trying to make it a lot like Texas Chainsaw Massacre or the remake of House of Wax, where it was a bunch of dipshit teenagers who end up at this Usher house.
Yeah.
And then one of the characters in it realizes she's actually part of the Usher family, and then kind of inherits the house as all of her friends die, kind of in ways and stuff. And I was like, man, I should really go back, and now that I've written this thing, I could do this. I could write this story. So I was like, instead of, that story, I'm going to write it as kind of a gothic romance and set it in modern day, except it's like in modern day, but when you get to Usher House, it's so set in a time, like it's almost a period piece in itself, because Usher House doesn't change at all. And it literally sucks energy and everything. I mean, so I wrote the first book, and, I had a lot of fun. And then, at the time when Claire was getting published, I pitched it to my publishers, and they were like, yeah, let's do that. So anyway, I wrote it, and it kind of worked out. And the publisher originally wanted it, and then they decided. And then I wrote a second book, and then by the time I had the second book, they're like, "Yeah, you know what? We're just gonna focus on Claire." I was like, "Great, thanks." So,
well, it's good. They're still focusing on your own thing, but
exactly. And so I just published them through Brambleberry. I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna. And honestly, the cover of the first one is just beautiful. It's by an artist named Lynn Hanson, and it was exactly the cover I wanted, because when I was growing up as a kid, there used to be this woman next door to my grandma. Her name was Noni Rand, and she would just chain smoke these like Pall Malls and read these really lurid paperbacks with these covers. And we'd always go over there, and I'd always be like kind of looking at them, and you're like, so I kind of wanted that
very pulp feel.
Exactly. The gothic romance kind of stuff with a woman running away from I was like, I want that cover. And the publisher at the time, they wanted something more modern. I was like, you know what? I'm the publisher now. I want exactly that cover. And she delivered, and she even made it look, old and banged
up. Yeah, it looks
up.
like beat up and all that. It's really cool.
I couldn't ask for a better cover. I mean, that was just, I have it framed on my wall because I love it. So, but nobody really knows what the future of movies are going to be. I feel like it took me this long to get to movies, and now it's like, of course, everything's changing.
Right.
So that's
But you've got so much material, and it seems like you're not playing the wait and see game, No. Yeah. I'm very lucky. I have 5 or 6 movies in production, so I'm very lucky with that. And awesome.
And St. Clair definitely helped with that. That's what my lawyer said too. He's like, you know what? No matter what happens with St. Clair, or if you like the movie or not, it legitimizes you as an artist, because people are spending millions of dollars on something you created, and that completely legitimizes you. And he was exactly right, because now people see that, oh, okay, well, this guy can get movies made, and clearly he does work that people want to see. So, yeah, that definitely helps to get that first work out there.
Yeah, that's got to feel great. That's really cool.
It does. Yeah. My first 2 projects were based on my books, but now I'm starting to write original stuff now. And it'll be nice to get, have one adapted work and then one original work,
Won't it be nice to have somebody say, gosh, she's like an overnight success?
Yeah, I was like, overnight success. That took about 40 years, so
right.
Yeah, I started writing at 14. So I just turned 58. So
there you go.
You don't look it.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Okay. Well, I could keep talking about writing and books and movies all night, but we got to wrap this up at some point. So
Sure.
I'll jump to our final question,
Okay.
which is a little more about your home.
Okay.
So the question is, where are you choosing as home? It sounds like you bounced around a lot, but I want to say Walla Walla is probably the destination you're going to feel most comfortable in.
Yeah. I decided to move back to Walla Walla in 2011. I lived in Seattle for quite a long time. I lived in New York City, and I was just, writing a lot about, I mostly write about small town life, and I just really kind of missed it. And also a lot of my dad wasn't doing too well. My mom wasn't doing well. I was like, if I don't actually spend time with these people, I'm going to regret it. So
sure.
I moved back, and it's been great. I love this area so much. I walk around, Bennington Lake, and there's all these trails very close to my house.
Wait, you're getting ahead of me. I was going to say,
that's exactly what
the question is, Ken and I come to visit for a day. What's the Don tour?
Yeah. What are we doing?
It depends what you like to do. If you like to go out and eat, there's a lot of great restaurants here, like Public House, and there's AK.
We both like to eat and drink, and we both like exercise, physical activity,
daytime stuff, music, whatever.
Absolutely.
Lots of music.
There's a lot of there's a lot of good music. There's always bands every night, like at wineries, and there's breweries, wineries. There's always live music every night. It's kind of fun because when Walla Walla, like when I was growing up, I always kind of thought it was this kind of podunk town, and then I was like, there's tourists coming here, and then later on it was like Bruce Willis is buying a house here, and then like Michelle Pfeiffer sent her kid to school here, and I know one member of REM has a house here, and so it's kind of like, really, Walla Walla? It was just like, to me, it was just this like stop that was nowhere. And now there's, I forget how many wineries here, like 150 or some crazy amount. There's breweries. And the thing is, we have film festivals here. There's the Walla Walla Movie Crush. And so like, I feel like a lot of Seattle kind of moved with me here. So I kind of get all the big city stuff without all the big city expense and the traffic and everything like that. So I feel really lucky. And the fact that I'm making movies, with Hollywood producers, and I don't even have to live in California. In fact, a lot of my friends are wanting to get out of California because it's so expensive and all the work is elsewhere. So I feel very lucky, that I have a house and, my dogs, and I can, I set my own hours. I feel very fortunate for that, and I don't take that for granted at all.
So you were saying you go on like these insanely long walks. I
do,
which it is, as a microcosm, is not insanely long, but to do it repetitively, a lot is a lot. So where do you go? Like if you were going to be hanging out, like what's your favorite spots?
Sometimes it just depends on my mood. Sometimes I do a walk around town, like I know how many steps every avenue is, because I started out like, I was all about steps. It was like, okay, I need to get at least 10,000 steps. And then I was reading a thing. It's like, actually 14 to 15,000, is the sweet spot as far as, and then I had a friend of mine like, oh, you only do 10,000. I do 20,000. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do 20,000 from now.
Uphill?
I know. Yeah, exactly. I was like, oh, sure, outdo me. So then I started doing 20,000. Right now I do about 15, and that ends up being like, it's 8 to 10 miles, and sometimes that gets excessive, but like on beautiful days, like today was absolutely gorgeous. It just for my mental, well-being and for ideas, I came up with, I'm always on my phone, like recording. I open up an email and I just start like dictating like ideas and stuff like that. So like, and I get a lot, sometimes I get like my business done. Sometimes I'll do save the cat beat sheets. Like, I'll actually be watching a movie. It's crazy. Like I just did the Charlie Brown Christmas one, and that was an easy one because it's only a 24-minute movie. But I'm sitting there like I got it on Apple TV, and I'm like, I know it, so I'm just listening to it. I'm like, okay, that's that beat. And then I would turn it up, stop it, like I dictate the beat, and then go on. And then I take it home, I clean it all up, and so in an afternoon, I basically wrote that beat sheet while on my walk. So I'm like, there's something to this. So. I get a lot done while on my walks, but sometimes I just want to walk. I don't listen to music. I just want to I want to get away from my screens, any stimulation. I don't want to know what's going on in the world because it
want to be in motion.
Exactly. So, yeah, it just depends. But yeah, sometimes I'll walk around town. Sometimes I'll walk up the lake that way. It just really depends on what my mood is at the time. So
okay, so lots to see, lots of walking around. Where do you stop and eat?
Oh man. Well, my favorite place in town is a childhood friend of mine owns. It's called Public House 124. And I love it there because it's like Cheers. I mean, it's funny. Me and my girlfriend go in there all the time, and we had some friends in there, and we were sitting there, and they were just coming up to us and like, "Hey, try this," and we were like royalty there. And people were like, "Man, you guys are free." So it's a great to go place where everybody knows your name, right?
Yeah, sure.
Public House 124 is my place, and they serve Irish Death, which is a dark beer made here in Washington State. It's like, I think it's like 7.8. It's a strong brew, but I really like dark beer. They're one of the only places in town that serves it. So I love going there and getting Irish Death.
Is it carbonated? Is it carbonated and cold, or is it like one of those like cask things where it like comes out? It's like
it's definitely better served cold.
Okay,
yeah. It's a really good beer. They actually do serve it over at the Green Lantern, another really great spot. There's a lot of great little places here.
What kind of food are you leaning toward?
It depends. Like if it's Friday night, I love like prime rib night. I mean, it just depends. But a lot of times I'll get like at Public House they'll have like the public burger, or they'll have like a French dip that you can get as a chopped salad. So a lot of times I get chopped salad because I try not to eat too much bread. So I get it as a chopped salad. And then, but of course, I got all my carbs in the beer. So, like I think 2 of those beers, and then like, it's about drinking a couple loaves of bread. And then, like, I'm a cheap date too, because like a couple beers and I'm schnockered. So like, and that's about the only drinking I do during the week. I give myself that Saturday night, and it's just something about like allowing yourself to go out like one night a week. You just feel so rich, just like to be able to go out just one night a week to go out to eat someplace like that. It's just like, I don't know. It's just really good for your well-being.
Good for your soul. Especially to go like someplace like that is like familiar, that has that doesn't
absolutely
it isn't Applebee's.
Yeah, I try to save money and eat at home all the time, but man, that have that one night a week indulgence. Where you go out. Exactly. It is an indulgence. It gets really expensive, so it's like at the same time, it's like, well, you know what, you only
can't take it with you, right?
Exactly. So.
What kind of music scene are there? Like, so if you're going out, are there bands there that you like to go out, like, or places to go see?
Yeah, there's a lot of local bands play here. We're starting to have more concerts and stuff like that here.
Okay. Is there a place you'll go for music?
They have. There's an amphitheater behind the 19th hole that they just opened up. They had like a few years ago. I guess a few years ago, more like 10 years ago, they had a Gentleman of the Roads tour, and they had like Flaming Lips here, and Mumford & Son.
Yep.
Yeah. Mumford & Son, all that. And I think that was kind of a revolution, because Walla Walla realized like it was a huge concert. Everybody was there, and they realized like people want these venues. They'll have bands at like the fair, like I saw, like Blue Oyster Cult and Queensryche there, which was pretty cool.
Sure.
So, which is not your typically Walla Walla is very rural, and that's mostly, I grew up I'm not a huge country and Western fan, but my family is. And so I saw every country and Western concert, but now they're starting to play my kind of music. Like, I'm a definite orchestral film nerd, but I love, punk rock, heavy metal. I love it all. Like fast and intense. I love it. So, like the fact that Blue Oyster Cult and the Queensryche are actually playing in Walla Walla is kind of amazing. So they just need to bring Iron Maiden and Metallica. We're good. And Megadeth.
Yeah,
awesome.
That's really funny. Actually, on that note, I was going through your playlist and all that stuff, and I forgot how much I love Rust in Peace, the Megadeth album, Rust in Peace. It's like the perfect album.
It is. It really is.
I listened to it on Friday nights.
I know. I think it's the greatest album. I really do. I think it really transcended that genre, that thrash metal genre. Yeah. Rust in Peace is perfect. It's
I'm like,
perfect.
I have tons of friends that can't get past Dave Mustaine's voice, which I get. He sounds kind of whiny and all that stuff. But if you can, if you just listen to the music quality of it, all over the place. So good.
I'm lining this up for tomorrow. I haven't listened to that in a long time.
Oh my God, it's so good. It's so good. I listened to it twice in a row.
Rust
I was like,
Peace.
I gotta get it.
Oh yeah. I was actually, that was when I was an Army Ranger when the album came out, and I could tell it was genius then, and I still listen to it to this day. You know, I mean, certain tracks, that's a great album.
All right, well, it's getting late.
Yeah.
This has been delightful.
Yes,
thank you for joining us. It was really nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you, Karen. There, and thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's fun, and I feel like I'm in good company. It's like you had another Save the Catter, Jamie here too.
Yeah. We had him on a while ago.
Yep. And Mike Mendez, you talked to Mike Mendez. So I don't really know him personally, but I know he's kind of in a group of people. Yeah. And Richard Chismar, who works with a good friend of mine, Mark Pavia, who was actually the original writer director of St. Clair. So yeah. So
oh wow. Okay, cool.
Yeah, they're actually developing a movie together. I think it's based on a Stephen King premise or something like that. So
okay, that would make sense. He and King seem to be buddies.
Yeah. They go to baseball games and everything, which to me would be the greatest. Like going to a Red Sox game with Stephen King would be like the best thing ever. I mean, that would be cool. So.
It's funny. On that note, I was thinking about you because and the part of it was we talked to Eduardo Sanchez, and he was like, he lives sort of local, but he's like, he just puts on. He's like, some nights I just put on really spooky sounding music and go drive in the country and come up with ideas. I'm like,
dude. I know. When I saw the Blair Witch Project, that movie scared the piss out of me.
Yeah,
I was terrified by that movie. I was really. I know a lot of people are like, it's nothing, but like that movie haunted me for a long time.
Yeah, stays with you.
I think it's brilliant. So and you talk to him too, and that's great. So
yeah, lots of cool people. We've lucked out with good guests so far.
Yeah.
We keep waiting for the miserable one. I keep waiting. I know it's coming. There's got to be somebody coming, but it hasn't happened yet.
No. I feel very lucky. Thank you. I mean, I was looking at people like, wow, you guys have interviewed some great people.
Yeah. Well, you got a ton of irons in the fire, and I hope that they all work out.
Yes, indeed.
I do too. Yeah. All you can do is keep going. You know, like as far as being a writer, I write whether I get paid or not because that's all I know how to do. So I mean. Mm-hmm. You have to keep going forward, and that's all you can do. Just make yourself happy is really all you can do. If you depend on other people for happiness, you'll be the most miserable son of a bitch around. So you just got to make yourself happy with whatever you can do to make yourself happy. As long as you don't hurt anybody else or, make yourself happy, however you do that.
Solid advice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Very cool. Well, good luck, and hopefully our paths cross again down the road.
All right.
It's great.
Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Take care, Don.
Bye. All right. Bye.